Hi, everyone, and welcome. I am Rachel Lang, the Outreach Director for NCGR, and I'm here today with Catherine Urban. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello, Rachel. Hello, NCGR. Thank you for having me today.
It's so great to be with you. And I'm really excited about our conversation because we're going to be talking about astrological education, which is something I know you're really passionate about, something I'm very passionate about. Both of us are teachers, both of us have been students. And so I'm really looking forward to diving into this topic today. But first, before we start talking about this subject, I wanted to ask, how did you come into astrology, and how did you get your start?
Okay. So, astrology found me at a pretty young age. I was in middle school and we did like the whole Greek mythology unit. And I don't know, I just got pulled into studying astrology. I bought a book at the local bookstore and I got really into like the compatibility of my friends and like the people who we were crushing on and things like that. And so that's kind of where I kept it for a long time. I was always like the astrology girl growing up. And then I moved to New York in 2007. And that's when I got connected to the NCGR community. And that's when I realized that there's so much of a bigger astrological world that I hadn't known about. And the more I found out about it, the more I came to understand what you could do with astrology, the more I wanted to go deeper. And so that was my start. And I have been just still kind of in and out of this obsessive phase with astrology for the last 10 years. So, yeah, I've continued my education and most recently completed STA's horary course.
Wow, I'm actually taking that this summer, and I'm so excited.
It's awesome.
So yeah. It's funny that you say that it's become an obsession because some people would just call that a career path. So, but I mean, I think that the obsession can lead to you really making an impact in the field, and for you to really, to make this your life's work.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so it sounds like, I mean, if you just finished the horary training, and it sounds like you are on this path of finding ways to learn and finding ways to remain a student. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I even, as you mentioned, like we're both teachers, and I even like struggle sometimes to like call my students, because on one hand, like I feel like they're also my colleagues in a way. Like I feel like in this world, I'm facilitating knowledge to people who are curious to learn astrology, but I think I'm so humbled by our craft that I feel like I can't take complete ownership over it because I still consider myself very much a student, very much. Like you could not learn all that astrology has to offer in one lifetime. Like you simply can't. And it's something that keeps intriguing me and keeps me interested and keeps me wanting to learn more is because it seems like the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know. And like there's so many different avenues of astrology that you could specialize in or study. And in order to, and like you could go so deep with each and every one of those. So, yeah, of course, I 100% consider myself a student for life and am excited to share this knowledge with other people.
mhm. Me too. I think that's one of my favorite things. I love the way that you frame that about facilitating knowledge rather than imparting knowledge, because I think that with Saturn, Jupiter, and then Pluto in a couple of years moving into Aquarius, that more and more the power dynamics in classrooms and in education and in every system are going to be changing. And I agree with you. I'm always learning from my students. It's so interesting to me and especially the ones who are coming at astrology from a different perspective. What are some of the teachers that have made the biggest mark on your astrology knowledge?
So, I definitely the teachers that I had in the beginning. So that would have been Joseph Adeo, New York, He does a lot with NCGR actually, and I studied the most with him, and then also John Marcusella. And one thing about John that has always stuck with me is he has this reputation of being like a very Saturnian teacher, and he was. And I came into my interest in astrology like very wide-eyed, coming more from um like a very metaphysical approach, and even, dare I say, new agey. I was very wide-eyed when I was younger, and John always had this very Saturn way of teaching, and the way he related to us about Saturn, it stuck with me. And thanks to John and thanks to my Saturn return, like I love Saturn now. So I gotta give a big shout out to John Marcusella for making me believe that Saturn and I could be friends, because it's been good. So yeah, there was John, and then I studied with Shirley Sofer for a while with the chart synthesis group, and that was really nice. Like being able to be in a supportive environment where you can all take your different perspectives, all the students can take a different perspective and be able to delineate a chart together. And you get everyone's different perspectives, as you mentioned, people coming from all different backgrounds. Because that's the thing with astrology is that these are symbols, and we're all working with the same set of symbols. However, much of the interpretation is up to the viewer, and based on your life experience, based on your personality, based on who you are and your experience with life, what you're going to bring to the table to interpret those symbols. So that was really cool, and I actually was so inspired by that format that that's something I actually offer right now, to my students. So that was really great. And then, of course, Deb Holding and Lee Lehman from STA, like they really they are really knowledgeable about horary and more. Like the classical techniques are really cool. I'm really thrilled that they're coming back into the mainstream, that they're being remembered and made easier to understand. Because I was telling my students yesterday, here's the table of essential dignity. I know it's crazy to look at. When I was first studying astrology, I didn't know what to do with that thing. And so I didn't touch it. But these techniques and way of working with astrology is really helpful, really supportive to even being able to understand it at a really basic level. So I'm really excited to see those techniques coming back. But yeah, I mean, these are some technical astrologers here, and yeah, wow, I'm just still floored by their knowledge.
Yeah, me too. I mean, when I first started learning, I was it. This was about 30 years ago, and ev- all this the only school that was available where I lived in the middle of the Midwest. Things were just online, and all that was available was more of the New Age astrology. Like the teachers that I worked with were also teaching psychic development and spirit. I was in a spiritualist community, and so my background really started in more of the humanistic, psychological, and modern tradition. And since the traditional astrology has become more known, more recognized, I feel like my practice of astrology is so much deeper. And like you said, it's like I'm always so in awe of how much there is to learn. And, especially with all of this breadth of knowledge that we have about the field, it's really exciting to fine tune the understanding and to really, like you say, it's like I think studying traditional and studying modern and putting those two together has given me the ability to really layer the symbols and to come up with more of a language for chart synthesis.
I agree. I couldn't agree more on that. And yeah, I mean, that table of essential dignity, like I was telling my students yesterday, like this is going to help you to not feel like you have to memorize every placement for every planet. Like you're not going to have to sit there and memorize the sun through all 12 signs, Mars through all 12 signs, Saturn through all 12 signs, and then every other layer of interpretation that goes into that. And just being able to take this table, it's going to help you to be able to understand. So that's something I'm really passionate about as far as my approach to teaching is giving the students the tools necessary to kind of break down each and every placement of a planet in a house, in a sign, and being able to break those down into the littlest pieces possible so that when you're staring at a chart and you're new, I don't know about you, Rachel, but I used to just glaze over because there was so much to look at.
Totally.
It's
Yeah.
like I don't know how to get into this, and so being able to teach people how to like break it down piece by piece, it's really helpful.
Mhm.
So that's basically my angle here.
I love that. Yeah, actually, one of the big turning points for me in my own astrology study was when I went to this little symposium by ESAR that was all like these master teachers teaching techniques for chart synthesis, and like every one of them had a protocol for how to approach a chart. And yeah, it's like you said, when you're first starting out, like you want to know everything, the minor aspects, and like I would put everything into the mix. But I think, like you said, it's like finding ways to teach and to learn that helps you to prioritize what to look at first and come up with a system for chart for chart analysis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, where was that class when I was starting out? Yeah, that would be really cool. That's something I would love to see more of actually in our community is the behind the scenes, like how the professionals actually like what's their process like? Because I know everyone probably has like their own kind of pathway into the chart, and that would be so cool to see, I guess, people demonstrate their way in. How
Yeah.
cool.
Well, what about you? What are the first three things that you look at when you first look at a chart?
Okay. So one of the first things I'm always going to look at is the ruler of the ascendant. That's a big one. That's going to tell you so much about a person. It's just one of the most personal points in the chart, and you'd be surprised how much information you can get about a person's life and their personality based on the ruler of the ascendant and what house it's in, which planet is it, which sign is it in, how comfortable is it in that sign. And yeah, you can get so much information there. Another really important thing that I look at is if are there any planets conjunct an angle? And if there's not, then I will look at the angular houses because those planets are going to be really pronounced, especially if it's in the first house, especially if it's in the 10th house. But primarily, I'm looking for planets conjunct an angle because those planets are going to be really, really loud in a person's chart. I would also look at planets conjunct the nodal axis. I think that that is really important for a person's life. And while the nodes aren't something I would necessarily look at first, I do look a lot at those. I think they're really important. Um, so yeah, I think lastly, I'm going to look at the sun and the moon. Like those ones are also, even though like that's pretty basic, like you always want to look at the sun and the moon first. Like it doesn't matter how long you've been studying astrology, like the basics are often, you can rely on those the most. So always look at the sign that the sun is in, the house placement that the sun is in, and same with the moon. And do they have any planets conjunct them? And what aspects are they making? And I think that that is going to tell you so much about a person. Yeah, so that's where I usually start.
Absolutely, I love that, and those are great places to start. I take a similar approach, only I do tend to start with the sun and the moon just to get like an overview, just to see like, okay, what are the big themes in this person's life. But yeah, I love that. Do you work with asteroids or fixed stars or any? I know you work with Eris because you've written about
Yes.
it on your website, and other goddesses. What other chart? What chart elements do you work with?
So I go through phases like with the other elements. So yeah, I'm still really into Eris, but I went through like a really big Eris phase. I really connect with the energy of Eris and think she's so cool. Want to know more about her. So yeah, Eris is one that I pay attention to. Chiron, I always pay attention to. And the other asteroids I have like gone through phases where I try to get to know them better, but I don't primarily work them because I feel like there's so much to look at in the chart that I don't want to get overwhelmed. So, but yeah, I mean, who knows? And that's the cool thing with astrology is that, you can include the lots in the chart, or you can include midpoints, and you're never done, right? So, yeah.
Um, what I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit. I have so many
Yeah.
questions in my mind that I can't figure out which ones I want to start with. This is a problem with having a Gemini moon. Everything gets gets
Oh,
congested. Uh,
now I understand because I know we're both
yep,
Libras,
yep.
and yeah, and I just love that we're just like two Libras talking about education because I feel like Libra doesn't get enough press for how nerdy we can be.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, we're an air sign. There's
Yeah,
so that we approach life from a very intellectual perspective, but because we're Venus ruled, a lot of people don't recognize that.
exactly.
But I mean, in when I was in graduate school, my philosophy professors were mostly Libras or had big Libra placements. Like I know a lot of real strong academics and intellectuals who are Libras. So I'm with you. I think we should start a campaign.
Yes. Yeah.
But I had two questions, and they're unrelated, but I'm curious about both of them. And so you just became a mother last year, right?
Mhm.
I, I,
Yes.
I see your beautiful daughter on Instagram and social media. Um,
Thank you.
has that shifted how you think about charts, or like in looking at the way that she's being developed? um how has that shaped your ideas of astrology?
Yeah, so I have so many thoughts on this. But one of the things that has like really been in process for me is, well, we know that every chart has its blessings and its challenges. So I'll be straight with y'all. Like my daughter kind of has a difficult moon. And so I'm like, well, what does that mean for me as her mom? And so I've done like a lot of thinking about that, and also trying not to think about it and trying to let it be, because we know that, you know, the chart is basically like a blueprint for a life. And so, on some level, I think that she chose me for a reason, um, so that I can facilitate whatever lessons that she's here to learn. Some of our most difficult lessons are through our parents. Like, you spend a lot of time talking about your upbringing and your parents, like in a client setting. I also think, though, that like the sun and the moon, um, while we may have initially learned that the sun is more like quote unquote masculine or whatever. I think that like the sun and the moon are really reflective of the parental setting. Like it's both parents. It's
Mhm.
it's both parents. I think the fourth house and the 10th house are both parents. Now, if you're doing horary and you're asking about a father, or you're asking about a mother, then you might want to break down those houses. But I do think that in a person's chart where families are multidimensional, so multidimensional, um, I think it's important to create space for, like, the moon really represents the early environment, what was going on in the person's life. So I mean, my daughter's moon could just be the pandemic that she was born into.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be something that I'm going to do to her or whatever, you know what I mean? And so I think being able to hold space for that openness the same way that we do with our clients. I think that it's our job as astrologers to make judgments sometimes, but we also have to keep a very open mind, because we don't know how these energies are going to show up for someone,
Mhm.
and until we ask, or until the chart begins to unfold. And so I think just reminding me to be open and curious, that there's so many different ways that her chart could show up, just like anybody else's. And that's what we do a lot in a consultation setting. Is if someone has like a really challenging aspect, we're always offering them like, how else can we get this to show up for you so that you feel more autonomous over your chart. Like, how do we get this energy to shift a little bit? So yeah, I guess like I do think a lot in that vein lately, Rachel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, though, or I would imagine that it'd be interesting the way in which expanding your perspective on those placements in a natal chart would also relate to how you teach. I mean, I know for me, I am always trying to take in my classes and in my practice with clients, trying to take gender, like trying to nuance the masculine, feminine
Right.
energies, trying to expand the concept of the fourth house, 10th house, sun and moon, and so it sounds like you're through your experience of watching your daughter grow and trying to understand how those chart placements play out for her, that it might actually help to expand your own ideas of
For
those
sure.
chart elements.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that this is like a topic for people. Like I know some astrologers and they're like, I'm not going to look at my child's chart, or I'm not even going to look at like my partner's chart. If you start a new relationship, like so that you can allow yourself to be really present with the person before you start doing all the math in your head and, the logic problems that we do. Um, but I do find value in knowing, these are the things that she might lean toward. These are the things that she might be interested in, or this is a potential struggle that she might have that you might want to be especially mindful of. So I do think that there is value. I'm more on the team of let's look at it, let's look at the chart, but that's just me.
I'm on that team too, although it has gotten me into trouble with relationships before.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, so you just started your own YouTube show, correct?
Mhm.
Yay! Oh, that's so
Yeah.
great. And um, what are some of the ways in which do you notice that there's a difference between how you teach your students, like in a class setting, or what you offer on your channel for like a broader audience?
Yeah, for sure. So in the YouTube series that I'm doing, we're calling them astrology shots. So just like little, espresso shot, wheatgrass shot, whiskey shot, whatever your taste is of the day. Just like a quick little tidbit on an aspect or placement that's on the horizon here. And so yeah, those are meant to just be like quick and, you know, they're geared towards people who are learning astrology, geared towards people who are interested in astrology, but maybe they don't need to sit for 20 minutes to learn about Venus and Taurus and everything that it's going to do. I think people are busy nowadays. I think people's ability to take in information and digest it, we're so busy nowadays. So I'm just keeping them short and to the point, and people seem to like that. But with my students, yeah, like let's go deep. Let's go deep into it. What do you want to know? Like, let's nerd out over this chart. Let's nerd out over this placement and really, really pick it apart. So I'm not sharing all the nerdy details on the YouTube channel. Those are meant to be like more accessible at like a beginner level, basically.
Hmm, that makes sense. Um, when have you watched any of your students like grow and become professional astrologers?
Yeah. So I didn't start teaching that long ago. I started teaching like 2, maybe 3 years ago now. And yeah, a couple of my students, actually several of my students are just starting to like offer readings. One is like taking it to the next level and she's starting to like create content and things like that. So it's really neat to see. It's really a source of pride for me, like to be able to see like the good kind, I guess, to be able to see um, your like astrology babies grow up and take and it's interesting too because you'll hear them say things that you would say.
Uh-huh.
So you're like, oh,
Yep.
yeah, I know where they heard that from. And it's really cool. It's really cool to hear and to see. It's really gratifying. And but of course, I also love to see like when my students like they've studied with me for any duration of time, and then I see them studying with other astrologers too, and I think that that's really cool too. Like by all means, I mean, I had so many teachers, and I think it's really important to be able to um have like be offered different perspectives on something. And as we talked about, like each of us brings a different set of eyes to the table. And so I love to see that as well. I'm never offended. Like go study with multiple people. I think that's really valuable in order to become really well-rounded in our perception and in our technique too.
Hmm. Do you do you recommend uh, if someone's watching? We have a lot of, obviously as part of NCGR, we have a lot of people who are just starting their astrology careers, or who are working toward becoming professionals. Do you have any suggestions of places where people could get more of that in-depth education? Uh, Obviously, your classes.
Yeah.
um, but what are some of the programs that you have been a part of that you have found really valuable that you might recommend to others as well?
So I would really recommend, we're talking NCGR here. I would
Uh,
recommend the NCGR curriculum. Um, I found so much value from having a structured learning. And yeah, there's many teachers out there that are offering. Like I know some teachers will offer straight up like this is the level 1 NCGR, this is the level 2 NCGR. I took level 3 with Mira Epstein actually. Um and so yeah, I think that I found so much value from a structured education. I know a lot of um younger astrologers getting into the field, they're learning a lot just online, learning a lot from Twitter and like the various threads and everything like that. And that's a cool way to learn. But there's going to be a lot of holes in your understanding, I think that way. I think that it doesn't matter who you study with or when or where, but I would always recommend that you take some kind of course. Like if you're interested in taking astrology to the next level, if you're interested in being an astrologer who facilitates readings for other people, I would recommend taking any sort of committed course, whether that's an 8-week course or 12-week course, 20-week course. Lots of different astrologers are offering different styles of education that might be great for the kind of astrology you want to study, or um, what works for your schedule. I know some people have like pre-recorded classes and then some people have live classes. So, yeah, I just would recommend doing some kind of formal study if you want to start offering readings to people. I just think that it's really important to have some kind of structured and more formal education.
yeah, which also brings up the question of certification. What inspired you to? I know some astrologers do get certified and some don't. What was your motivation in doing that?
Oh boy. So I'm motivated by like milestones and things like that. Like I want to get to that point or whatever. That's just how I work. So for me, the certification was motivating me. Like I'm going to study this and I'm going to take the test and I'm going to get a certificate. That, just to be honest, was really motivating for me. But the there's more to that story because when you have it's more than just a certificate, right? Like there are like for example, you know, level 1 is going to be all about basic. Level 2 is going to be more about predictive and then some of the odds and ends. You're going to learn about fixed stars. You're going to learn about minor aspects. You're going to learn about the asteroids. And then you get into level 3. You're going to learn about the history of astrology. You're going to learn a little bit about electional and horary and mundane astrology. And so it's very structured, and structure can be very supportive. You know, we're talking about Saturn here. Love me some Saturn. And then level 4, you get to specialize. You do a chart rectification,
Mhm.
and you can specialize in either research or as a consulting astrologer. And so for me, it was like, all right, well, this year I'm going to learn about these techniques, and then next year I'm going to learn about these techniques. And that was really supportive for me to feel like I could spend this amount of time in depth with a certain topic of astrology. And by the time I was done with the NCGR, I was like, all right, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a break from studying. I'm going to take a break from certification. Like I did this. And then Richard Smoot, who lives here in Cleveland with me, was like, "Hey, Catherine, I'm proctoring the ESAR exam. Do you want to take it?" And I was like, "Oh my God." And like him and Anne Orley, like they like talked me into it, and they're like, "You
Uh-huh.
can do it." And so I did it. And so I was really grateful for that, because basically once you get through this curriculum, you can just sit for the ESAR exam and you can have both. So,
Right. There's no math on the ESAR exam.
right.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the calculations part, or did you suffer
No,
through it?
I haven't taken the NCGR exam yet. But when I was first certified back in 2006 with the American Federation of Astrologers, and it was a lot of math, like progressing chart, like we had to progress a chart. You know, it was a lot of math. And I actually really loved learning the math. I mean, when I started doing astrology, I didn't have computer programs, and so I did it all by hand. And this was like for a few years until I was able to get a computer program. So I had that background knowledge, but then when you get out of practice with it, it's really easy to forget.
Oh yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
right now I'd have to probably relearn it just because I haven't done. But I think there's something in learning the way that to calculate it. There's a real poetry about like drawing a chart, and I used to actually take a protractor and draw the chart and like create lines, and it felt you really get to know that chart
Mhm.
by calculating where all of the planets are, and you can see exactly how fast or how slow they're moving on any one day. And so it's so valuable to know that
I
knowledge.
agree. I agree. I was initially really intimidated by the calculations, but once I learned them, it everything you're saying, like I grew to understand deeper, like the motions of the planets, what it is that you're actually looking at on this two-dimensional image. And yeah, it really, like a lot of people will critique the calculations part and say, that's pretty outdated. Like, why do we need to know that? And yeah, count your lucky stars. You don't have to calculate a chart by hand every time you want to draw one up. But it gives you so much appreciation also for your craft, because this is how it was done for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of years. It would take you 20 minutes to calculate a chart.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or longer if you're not good in math.
Yeah, 20 minutes if you're
Yeah,
fast.
yep, yep. Yeah, I know. I've actually thought about recently, just thought about the idea of getting certified with NCGR because I'm so much a part of the organization now. And I've been entertaining the idea of revisiting the calculation and bringing that back into my practice. So yeah, so it's so you're certified through both now. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, I
Excellent.
am.
Excellent. Yeah.
But I think if you already did the math, then they should give you like an honorary. Just saying, they should give you an honorary. You're if you're certified an A fan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll propose that.
Yeah, I second it.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I found like I pursued certification. This is, back in the at the time I was living in Tennessee, and there was one other certified astrologer like in the whole state, and I really felt like I didn't, I was just starting out. I didn't really have like I had a different career path. I had a marketing and fundraising career path, and I was like, well, if I get certified, and there's a board of people who think I'm good at this, then it gave me the confidence. It's like, okay, I can do this. I really do know what I'm talking about. And so I think for me, that was a really big, that opened the door. It gave me the confidence I needed to open the door to start my career. But I know
Mhm.
I know it's a hot topic. I know that especially now with TikTok astrologers and, with Twitter, so much of these conversations are happening. There are conversations around education and self-study versus studying with a teacher, or going through a program. There are conversations around certification or not certification, and so I know that this is a big theme. Um, do you encourage your students, like which way do you suggest your students go?
So I don't like nudge them in one direction or another, but I make it known like at the end of our beginners course, like here you have all the information that you need if you want to get certified for NCGR level 1. Except if you want to learn the calculations, we can do that on our own. And I have helped a few of my students pass their exam, and I've taught them the calculations and I've proctored the exam, and they've passed. And that's always a really proud moment. But I know exactly what you're saying is that, like, it is kind of a controversial topic nowadays. Like, people especially are concerned with accessibility and things like that because it does cost money to get certified. It does cost money to take courses. And there is so much more like free and accessible information out there. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there, and especially like I know Stormy Grace, like she's creating this YouTube academy and
Mhm.
being able to offer people quality information from quality astrologers for free. So there are like other ways to get quality information that's accessible. And I love the down and dirty like astro Twitter, like when people are just like, it's so Gemini when blah blah blah. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's such a great mundane way to learn astrology. I learned so much astrology just from working in a hair salon and being like, oh, the moon is in Scorpio, and this is what people are talking about that. Like, hearing all kinds of secrets today. So, I mean, I do love that style of learning too. But I think that, and formal education isn't going to appeal to everybody. Also, like, I think that's important to hold space for. Also, is that there's so many different ways to learn, and not everybody learns well that way. Like, not a lot of people have that kind of focus to be able to sit down and take this class at this time. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to look a little bit different for everyone, but I do stand by taking like some kind of formal training, some kind of course, like, and you will find your teacher. There will be the right teacher for you. And they always say that, like, when the student is ready, the teacher shows up. And I do believe that. I do believe that.
Me too. Absolutely. Well, I think that's probably a good note to close on. This has been a really fascinating conversation. I love talking about this topic. It's something I'm really passionate about, um, with all of my air sign planets. So thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience with us.
Thank you so much for having me today, Rachel. It was really great to connect with you.
You too. And I'll put all of your information down if anyone wants to get in contact with you or learn more about your practice. I'll put all of your information down underneath this YouTube. But just in case anyone's listening and not reading, how can people find you?
So you can find me at Astro Catherine a lot of places, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me there, and you can also find me at catherineurban.com where you can book your reading. That's where I'm going to post my blog, my information on classes, and yeah, you can find me on YouTube. And I think that one is just YouTube/Catherine Urban.
Great. All right. Well, thanks so much, Catherine.
Thank you, Rachel.